Hello friends, it's Kristine Vicenti from QueenCityStampArt.com, and I'm here today to share a little technique video using the Wink of Stella glitter brush pen to watercolor with our Stampin' Pad ink colors. So today what we're going to do is we're going to use this Free as a Bird stamp set, and we're going to create this really pretty bird card, friendship card, using Wink of Stella to watercolor the images. So let's get started here. I'm going to set this off to the side. We're going to be using Free as a Bird. This is one of the new stamp sets from Stampin' Up! In the new annual catalog that just launched this month. And we're going to be using this little bird and this flower and this little leaf and this "Your friendship means the world to me" sentiment. We're also going to be using a rectangle. We're going to be stamping on a rectangle panel that I cut using the rectangle stitched framelit dies. So we'll put those aside for now. And we'll put the base card together first. So I'm using a top folding landscape base card, and I'm using some pattern paper, some designer series paper from, isn't that pretty, from the Bird Ballad Suite. So this is actually, this stamp set and the paper are part of a beautiful springy suite that's Stampin' Up! Is offering. So I'm going to use some of this paper. I'm not going to use this real birdie side. I'm going to use the more plain side for this one, just to keep it a little, the focus more on the birds that I'm stamping and less on the paper. But this paper is gorgeous. It's one of my favorite suites in the new catalog. So we're going to, oops, we're going to get this, we're going to try this again. There we go. I'm sorry about that. I'm having a rough day today. And it's almost over. Okay. And then we're going to glue this panel down as well while I'm at it. This is Crumb Cake. And this pink color is Petal Pink on this designer series paper. Very soft, sweet color palette. All right, so I'm going to let this dry off to the side here. We'll revisit that in a minute. And now we're going to do some stamping. So the stamping today is going to be done with Memento black ink. Now normally when you're watercoloring, which is kind of what this is, you're not going to use a Memento black ink pad, because this is a dye-based ink, and dye-based inks will run if you put water on them. This Wink of Stella brush pen that Stampin' Up! Offers is water-based. It has a glittery, metallic-y glitter substance in it that makes everything shimmer. I don't know if you can see it on the sample, but that little bird and the leaves and the flower are very shimmery. You can totally see it when you look at it in real life. You might not be able to see it on camera, but trust me, it's gorgeous, and this is a beautiful way to watercolor if you like shimmer and shine. So I'm going to use the Memento black ink for this because I'm not touching too much of the black, and I'm going to really try to stay away from the edges. This ink pad is perfect for our blends markers, absolutely perfect. But I wanted to show you a watercoloring technique, and I don't have another ink pad that I can use. I don't have the Stays On ink that's in the catalog. Because that would be ideal. Stays On ink is a thinner based ink, and so when you use it with water to watercolor, it's not going to run. So ideally that's the one you should be using, not this one. But I'm going to show you using this one, and you'll see that it will come out okay because I'm going to stay away from the edges. Okay, so let's get this show on the road. The first thing I'm going to do, whenever I stamp a panel that has a sentiment on it, along with other images, I stamp the words first because I want to make sure that the placement of the words is exactly where I want them, and that the images themselves are not going to crowd out the words. So once I've stamped the words, that looks good, then I can fill in with the other images around the words, and I know everything will be placed perfectly. So we're going to start with the little bird. His tail feathers are going to hang off just a hair, and that's okay. And then on this little scrap piece, I'm going to stamp the leaf image and the flower, because I'm going to fussy cut these out after I've colored them. So that's it for the stamping. Now I'm going to take my ink pads. So the first color, I'm going to start with the green. And the way you watercolor with ink pads is you take your closed ink pad and you give it a squeeze. And then when you open it, you'll have a little blob of ink in the lid. And that's the ink you're going to use. So you can use a regular water brush. We have these aqua painter water brushes that are great that you can use. These work especially good with watercolor paper, and since I'm not using watercolor paper and I really do want the glitter shine of the Wink of Stella pen, I'm going to use the Wink of Stella pen. Now this has a little brush with bristles too, so it really lends itself great for watercolor. So I'm just going to dip it into the color and pick it up with my brush, and then I'm going to use the brush to just kind of swirl the color on. So I'm just making little swirly motions with the brush to try to get some of the ink off. Now that first leaf is very dark because it was the initial hit of the color, and that's what's going to happen. Wherever you want the most color, you're going to put your brush down there first, because that's where you're going to get it. So I'm just going to fill in this leaf with a little bit of ink, and it's okay if it's light, you get a variation of light and dark. That's actually what you want. That's what gives it kind of the watercolor look. Because this leaf is so dark, I'm going to darken up these a little bit too, just to make it look like they all belong together, and that was not a mistake, because it really wasn't. Okay, so that's that. Now, before I switch colors, I'm going to give it a little squeeze, and then I'm just going to kind of brush off the color, make sure that the color is brushed off of the bristles. And then I'm going to close this up and move on to the next color, which will be pink. So I'm going to use Petal Pink, give it a squeeze, and I'm going to color in the flower. Sorry, I don't have music to play while I do this, but it shouldn't take long. You just kind of swipe in the color on and it goes on really quick. You don't have to be perfectly precise with it either, as long as you stay within the lines and try not to touch the edges of what you're coloring, because that's what's going to draw the ink and make that black ink bleed. So I really try to stay away from the edges, and just, that looks good. Okay, so I'm giving it a little squeeze, and I'm going to kind of brush it off and then move on to the next color, which I think will be the gray. We'll move on to the granite gray for his feathers. And what I'm going to do here is, this little bird has some sketchy lines, which are supposed to be where he's the darkest. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'm just going to put a little bit of gray ink where his little sketch lines are on the actual drawing. I'm going to keep it kind of light and not get too much ink on there, so I don't cover the lines completely. I just want to give him a little bit of shading, and this is a nice way to do it with this gray ink. It also looks really pretty with the subtle palette that I'm using in general. So then I'm going to kind of scrape off that one, and now I'm going to move on to the blue. This is Pool Party. And for Pool Party, I'm just going to stay kind of close to the edges, because that's where it's going to be the darkest. And then I'm going to kind of blend it out from there, like this. And when I run out of ink, I just pick up a little bit more. And I'm just kind of swiping it back and forth. This is a very tiny little bristly brush, so it doesn't hold much ink. So I'm kind of going back to get more pretty frequently, but that's okay. It's still a very quick way to color, and it gives a really pretty look. I feel like this is very watercolory looking, and it goes really nice with the way the image is kind of a sketchy drawing anyway. So there we go. And then the last color is a little bit of So Saffron for his beak. And I have a little bit there, and I'm just going to dab this on his beak to color that in a little bit. So there we go. So that's all the coloring. And like I said, I know you can't really see this well, but he is beautiful. He's got all this little glitter and shine on him, and this glitter will not rub off. So it's a really nice way to color and get some sparkle without, you know, getting glitter all over the place. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fussy cut out these flowers, the flower and the leaf, very quickly here. Or maybe not quickly enough if you're tired of watching me cut. Doesn't usually take too long, and these are pretty easy to cut out. Okay, here's the flower, and here's the little leaf sprig. I love cards like this that use multiple stamped images and create a little stamped cluster of elements. Some of, you know, the bird is stamped directly onto the project panel, and then these little elements add some interest and a little texture because they're not glued all the way down. So, you know, edges pop up and whatnot. This one is a little trickier to cut. I'm not going to cut the whole bottom of that stem because I want there to be something to glue down onto the paper, and it's going to be covered by the flower anyway. So I'm just going to tidy this up. There we go. Okay. And now I'm going to add these to the project panel. So I'm going to take a little bit of glue here. Pardon my head. A little bit of glue, and I'm going to put this here, this little sprig here, so he's kind of behind the branch. And then I'm going to put a little glue on the flower. And I'm going to glue that here, so he's behind the flower. So it's almost like he's in a little dogwood tree or something, perched. And I think that's it for the glue. And then, let's see, what am I going to add? I'm going to add a little piece of linen thread that I'm going to tie into a little bow to add to the little grouping of the little cluster of pretty over here. So I just tied a little bow. I'll fuss with the ends a little bit and then cut some off. And then I'm going to take a glue dot and I'm going to stick the bow onto the dot of glue like this and pick it off and then stick it onto my project right here at the base of his body. And then I'm going to add a little sparkly gem, a rhinestone gem, to the center of this flower like that. And now we have the little stamped panel is ready to go onto the card. So let's put that, let's get this card base back here again. Now this I want to pop up with adhesive. So I'm going to use the dimensional foam adhesive and add some to the back here. Don't want it to sag, so I'm going to add a few extras here. This is a pretty long panel. And then center it on the front of this card. There we go. Very nice. Okay, and there you have it. So we used the Wink of Stella glitter brush pen in clear to watercolor Stampin' Up! Ink onto the images and give it kind of a nice sparkly watercolor look. And that was the technique for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. You can find all the supplies I used at queencitystampart.com. Thanks so much for watching.